I hereby call this regular meeting of the CCSD Board of Directors to order. We have a quorum. All 5 members are present, and some recovering. But they made it all here, which is really great. So, such our Vice President, Deborah Scott. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? We have a full agenda today in terms of public comment. So I wanted to, I guess this is my space for my president's report, I wanted to talk a little bit about the time limits. As we point out, I think, and it's been pointed out many times before, the time limit for oral comments to the board here in the hall is 3 minutes. And of course, we're going to abide by that pretty strictly today because we have a lot of items, a lot of people wanting to talk. On the issue of comments that have been submitted in writing that will be read by our board secretary, Haley Dodson, I'm going to, in fairness, and maybe in fairness to her voice, also apply the 3-minute limit so that if a comment is running on and is hitting the 3-minute limit that she's reading, we will call time and go on to the next item. I think it's only fair to the people who come here to talk, and also the people talking on Zoom, who are under the 3-minute limit, that the people who write comments also have to abide by that limit. So if you see a little bit of a hiccup there in the reading, that's the reason for it. Without any further ado, I'm going to move on to agenda review. This is the time when anyone on the board, if they wish to, can have an agenda item moved or removed, not added, from this agenda today. Does anybody have any agenda items they want to have shifted?
Yes.
Yes, Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. I'll suggest we address topic 5B, the strategic plan update, to set the stage before we address topic 5A, receiving community input for the strategic plan. Seems like that order would be more rational.
Did anybody have any comments on that? I will take a show of hands actually to see how many people are here to speak on 4. Which is you want? Did you want 4A? 5A before 4A?
My suggestion, of course, the public hearing is the public hearing. That's topic 4. But in regular business, we have the strategic plan input followed by the strategic plan update, which the law.
Oh, I see.
That logic doesn't strike me as the right order.
Okay, well, in other words, 5B comes before 5A. 4A comes first. I assume most of the people here are here to talk about 4A, but not everybody. Is that correct? And show of hands for 4A? Yeah, pretty much, yeah. If there's no objection on the board, I'll make the shift. We'll do 5B first, and then 5A. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, and moving forward with the first item, hang on a second here. Board member communications. Any member of this board who wishes to briefly report on his or her activities, make an announcement, or ask a question for clarification can talk now. And I believe Director Dean is up.
I just want to mention that the general manager, our confidential administrative assistant, and I, along with our climate ad hoc committee on R&I, Julie Amadei and Mark Meeks, attended a workshop on the guidelines and the application process for the Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Grant. And our discussions are ongoing towards that grant opportunity. Just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other board member reports? Seeing none, move forward to public comment. This is the time, as we note here, where you can comment on items that are within our jurisdiction, but that are not on today's agenda. So these are things that we have that are within our scope, but we're not dealing with today. So I will go first through the speaker cards that I've received for this slot, and then we'll go to I'll go to Ms. Dodson to see if anybody online wants to speak, and then if there's any written comments for this section. So first of all, I have Richard DeVega. Thank you. Oh.
My name is Richard DeVega, Cambria citizen, and the topic I wanted to discuss was CCSD vehicles going home. For at least 15 years, and I believe substantially longer than that, certain CCSD vehicles go home with employees or management personnel every day. The cost of that is quite high. In gas alone, I estimate that the cost is $100 a day for the 4 vehicles to go home. Right now, 2 vehicles go home with employees and 2 vehicles go home with management personnel. In addition to that, based upon where they live, which is over in the Atascadero, Paso, Templeton area or Morro Bay, an additional 22,000 miles per vehicle is put on for commuting purposes. All that on top of whatever is used during the day for daytime work. The fuel cost comes out to about $36,000 for that daily commuting by those vehicles, okay? The purpose for those vehicles, or the justification for them going home each night, is for emergency situations. Those people are on call status, standby status, and the idea is that they need those vehicles to come back to complete their work in the case of an emergency. Now you have 2 types of emergencies. One would be weather-based, such as the recent storms, or a year ago, a storm that was closed Main Street with some flooding when the pumping station didn't work. Now, a storm-based emergency can certainly be foreseen. Okay, when we get told that there's going to be an atmospheric river storm and we're going to get 7 inches, that would be a time where maybe you would have those vehicles go home in anticipation of the storm. Our whole storm season, I don't know, 90 days, maybe 120 days out of the year, completely. Emergency ones, you never know when that's going to happen, that's for sure. But I would say that it is much more cost effective for people to come back to the district in their personal vehicle, pay the mileage, pick up a truck, and go to the emergency. The example that was used in the committee meeting that I went to was the Main Street water break that happened about a month ago, maybe it's a little more. Well, that happened during business hours, so the on-call vehicles had no bearing on being able to timely deal with that. In addition, it's a 45-minute response time standard for the on-call vehicles, and given where the people live—
Excuse me, 15 seconds.
And given where the people live, that's about how long it's going to take, if not longer. So if you have an emergency like water gushing on Main Street, 45 minutes to respond isn't going to, make a big difference.
Thank you. Time's up. Thank you very much. There's a Mark, and the last name is not legible to me.
That's been known to happen.
I see, okay. You're speaking on public comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My name is Mark Ober. I'm a resident of Cambria. I was going to give a long-winded speech, but I'm not going to. I want to raise the issue of Tyler Tech, who announced to certain residents of Cambria that they had a system maintenance problem, so they could not send me a correct bill. And without going to my details, I'm going to give the board individual letters to my particular situation at a later date, rather than to do that. There wasn't a system maintenance error. They lost the data. Somebody lost the data. Somebody at CCSD lost the data. Somebody at Tyler Tech lost the data. If at Tyler Tech they lost the data, have them write us a large check. If somebody at CCSD lost the data, do not send me a bill averaging that would cost me more than $200 extra that month. I've run multiple businesses in my life. If I called up my customers, be it Time Incorporated, the United States government, or many car dealers in Southern California and said, hey, by the way, I don't know what I shipped you last month. Why don't you front me some money? We'll make it right in the future. It's not going to happen. And I raise it for two tonality measurements. Number one, say you lost it, be truthful. Go and read my meter. In my case, I actually gave CCSD a reading on that email from Tyler Tech. They said, go check your meter if you'll see what's going on. And mine was only off by 10 units. And so my point is first of all, be truthful. The last time I spoke with you all at the board, it was regarding the Coast Unified versus on the pumping station. And recently in a letter, that was called a moral decision. To me, factuality is extremely important in that. And I will not pay a bill that's not based on facts and data. And if they don't want to believe, I had to send a photo of my own meter over to CCSD. Go read the meter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Jeff Hillman, who says you want to speak on agenda item 3, which is public comment. Do you intend to speak on public comment? Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, it's a public comment item.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hellman. I'm a resident of Cambria. I just started sitting, I heard that the town was talking about incorporating again, and I know this came up about 20 years ago. And this project would just completely eclipse the water plant in terms of commitment and financial burdens that could possibly arise. But there's a finance committee who wants to analyze and look at the facts and figures and do a report on it and see how it's going. I've been up here a lot of times in the past, and I'm usually pretty critical of everything. But I want to say that I was completely impressed by the finance committee. I think there was a lot of integrity, and I think it was absent a lot of dogma in terms of personal agenda. I assume that there's people on the board or people outside of the board that want to go and have incorporate. It's a dreamy thing. And then there's those of us who want to look at the financial responsibilities or want to keep Cambria quaint. That I don't know if the word quaint applies to Cambria anymore since the tourist board has been so incredibly successful. But so I got kind of worried. I go down to the finance committee and then I meet the new manager and I look at the people. I think that this board right now, I think that the manager and the crew on board right now is a fresh new start for this community. I really felt that the finance committee, and I guess I was sitting in on ad hoc and the committee, is a bunch of really great people who are doing an honest job trying to really evaluate it in kind of a neutral way. I didn't see any, trying to cut corners or pull stuff off or do crazy things. I think it was really a breath of fresh air. Remember, I'm somebody who's come up here a lot of times and criticized everybody and anything that comes along. And, that's our job. But you got to say something nice every once in a while to somebody who's doing a good job. And I want to commend the people that are on that finance committee for going forth and really trying to present people with facts, figures, and information that they can make an intelligent decision on and not trying to, deceive, or, try to make things like they really aren't. So again, just kudos to the new crew, to the new manager, to the people on board, on the staff. I hope that this is a new legacy for this town and we can shed the old legacy of everything was crazy, everything was nuts. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. Okay, Ms. Dodson, are there any people who want to speak on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience who might want to speak hasn't spoken yet? Oh, okay, any written comments?
Yes.
Okay.
The first written comment is from Doug Pugh. I respectfully ask that you consider the possibility of opening up some water positions. I have been on the wait list for nearly 20 years. When I bought my lot, I was assured by the realtor that the water moratorium was only temporary. Obviously, that was not the case. Like many others, I bought my lot with the intention to build and with the assurances my members of the community, realtors that dream was a reality. The dream has turned into a nightmare. We have been kicking this problem down the road for far too long, and we need to resolve it. I understand the concerns of some of the community, but I honestly believe that a limited controlled building of new homes, it's not only beneficial to the community, but to the Cambria Community Services Districts as well, infusing much needed revenue for other projects and improvements. I appreciate the opportunity for this input and look forward to the upcoming board meeting. The second public comment is from Frank Scorzari. Over 40 years ago, the CCSD made a promise to lot owners that they would provide them water. In making this promise, the CCSD created a water wait list and required lot owners to make a deposit to the district in the amount of $4,711 refunded in order to have a position on the official CCSD water wait list. On July 1st, 2003, the CCSD implemented a waitlist annual administration fee, currently $88, which in essence furthered the promise of eventual water. In early 2006, the CCSD came out of a build-out reduction plan. In this plan, the CCSD included the then 701 CCSD waitlist positions and stated the 701 properties on the CCSD waitlist will receive water connections during the 22-year projected life of the build-out reduction plan, per the build-out reduction plan brochure mailed out to property owners. We are now 4 years away from that promise being completed. Over all these years, in good faith, property owners have paid taxes, conducted annual weed abatement, and complied with all the rules associated with maintaining a whitelist position. I think it's time the CCSD makes good on their promise, which can be done by releasing water connections now pursuant to the county's growth allocation while the district continues to pursue final approval of the water reclamation facility. Respectfully submitted, Frank Scorzari.
Thank you.
The next public comment is from Leilon Whittaker. I will have to giggle, as it certainly is tiny. 7:30 to dawn. With all due respect, that doesn't solve the problem for the whole rest of the day. This is in regards to the dog park. I would still like to comment that when the EIR was done, it was years before they took down the eucalyptus trees. When the eucalyptus trees were up, it did help with the noise barrier for the homes that live above the dog park. The rodeo grounds where the dog park has been placed is like an echo chamber. You can hear conversations down there between folks. My biggest concern at the moment is not only being able to enjoy our decks because of the barking number 2. I've been told by 2 real estate agents that it's going to devalue our home because we have to declare it as a nuisance. I'll say it again, no one in Cambria would trade places with us. We built our home in 1999, way before the ranch was sold. We've even offered to help move the dog park, especially the large dog park on the left, which is underneath our deck in my bedroom. I have contacted an attorney, which we really didn't want to do, but he has said that a dog park is a nuisance, and so maybe we can come up with a solution because all of us, instead of going that route. I'm not mad at everybody or anybody. It's just life is really stressful with this situation. Thank you, Leilon and John Whittaker. And the last written comment is from Mark Garman. There's a new state law, AB 413, regarding how close vehicles can park next to a pedestrian crosswalk. We have several dangerous crosswalks in Cambria, both in West and East Village. When larger vehicles park in the spaces near the crosswalks, they cannot be seen easily by motorists, especially if the vehicles are large SUVs or pickups. Pedestrians often appear from behind those large vehicles suddenly, and if the motorists aren't alert, suddenly there's a family crossing in front of them. I suggest we replace those parking spaces near those pedestrian crosswalks with bike corrals. Bike corrals allow 8 to 12 secure parking spots for cyclists. That provides more potential customers while only using one standard parking slot. By creating these bike parking zones, the most hazardous intersections will become more visible to motorists as well as provide additional parking for cyclists. In order to conform to the new state law, we will need to address these dangerous crosswalk locations anyway. Why not improve Cambria's bike friendliness at the same time? We had several high-quality bike racks installed in a few locations in Cambria several years ago, but the bike corral concept was rejected by some business owners. Let's make our streets crosswalks safer and compliant with this new law. Please let me know how I can assist. We were able to supply Cambria with 3 high-quality secure bike racks at no cost to Cambria, and he provided the new state law link. Mark Garman.
Thank you. And I think there's no further comment in the public comment
No.
spot. Good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 4A, public hearing to receive community input on the draft project description for the water reclamation facility coastal development permit application, and directing staff to release the draft project description to the County of San Luis Obispo Department of Planning and Building staff for preliminary evaluation, input, and direction. And I think General Manager McElhaney can give an introduction on this one.
Thank you, President Gray. Yes, agenda item 4A, as you've already stated, public hearing to receive community input on draft project description for the water reclamation facility, coastal development permit application, and direct staff to release the draft project description. And I want to highlight draft to the County of San Luis Obispo of Planning and Building staff for preliminary evaluation, input, and direction. There's no fiscal impact associated with this item. However, costs for future-related items or future-related costs of the WRF are yet to be determined. District staff, in collaboration with our consultant, SWCA or SWCA, as we call them, and the WRF ad hoc committee, have prepared a draft project description for the water reclamation facility coastal development permit. This again is a final, not the final draft project description. It is merely a draft, and as I've been working with the ad hoc committee, we are already identifying areas in the draft that you see before you today that have some amendments coming already, and our utilities manager Green will be able to talk about that. Under the current emergency permit, the WRF may only be run under a declared stage 3 water shortage emergency. The 3 stages were expanded to 6 stages with the adoption of the 2020 water shortage contingency plan. In the new water shortage contingency plan, stages 4, 5, and 6 all represent emergencies as defined by California Water Code 350. However, stage 5 and 6 most closely correlate with the legacy program stage 3. 9 years or closer to 10 now, after funding the project was approved by the ratepayers, the facility remains permitted only for emergency use. In staff's opinion, the WRF should be operated proactively yet conservatively to prevent water shortage emergencies from escalating to emergency levels. This can only be done with a regular coastal development permit. It is recommended that the Board of Directors receive board and community input on the draft project description for the WRF CDP application and direct staff to submit the draft project description to the County of San Luis Obispo Department of Planning and Building staff for their preliminary evaluation and input. We are, just to sum this up, what we are looking to do is bring our final draft to the county to gather their input. If they can inform us on anything that they may see that would be problematic when we do the final submission to the county up the chain. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, President.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. It was a good description of what we're doing. And we do need to make it very clear that this is not the version that we intend to submit to the county as the final, or our final version for the application. It's a little like if you have if you're getting a permit of any kind that's somewhat complex, there's a back and forth between you and the county or you and the agency as to details to work out before you actually submit your final application. This is sort of what we're doing here. I think it's a good way to put it. So this is a public hearing, and everybody gets a chance to say their piece on what they see right or wrong with the document. What I will do is start out with questions only for clarification from the board to either Mr. McElhaney or Mr. Green, and then we'll open it to public comment. And again, as before, I'll have comment from the people who've already given me cards first, and then people online, and then written comments. So first, anyone on the board have questions for clarification on this document? I see Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just have a question on page 8 of the document, which is page 12 of the agenda. And the last sentence under recharge injection well that sentence doesn't end on this page, but then there are several pages of tables, and then it continues on page 15 of the document, which is page 19 of the agenda. So I just think that that is kind of confusing for whoever is reading this document, so that maybe at the end of page 8, where it says text continued on page 15 or something like that, because I'm sure there's a really good reason that these diagrams are where they are.
Thank you, Vice President Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a great point. It does reference Table 1 in the beginning of that paragraph, but as you head down the rest of that page, it is kind of confusing. So what we can do is we can add something like continued on page 3 or reference.
Any other questions for clarification from the board? Nope. Okay, then I'll move on to public comment. We have several speaking cards here. I'll start with Amanda Rice, who many of us know. Welcome back, Ms. Rice. Thank you.
President Gray, board, staff, hi. Amanda Rice, I served on this board from 2012 to 2020. When I got elected, it had been already 4,042 days since the moratorium was put in place. Back in the early 2000s, when the moratorium was first put in place, Elon Funky Blue, who was on this board, at every single meeting, counted the number of days it had been since a new connection had been issued. When I joined the board in 2012, it had been 4,000 days. We're now twice that. We're at 8,000. 22 years. This is not about growth. But this permit is not at all clear about that. And that's one of the biggest problems that the Coastal Commission has always seen, that it's going to induce growth. There's many things Cambria has done to limit the amount of growth, not the least of which to put together a build-out reduction plan that has not been implemented. But the other thing I wanted to say is in this, it talks about the averaged demand being 520 acre feet a year. But if you take the average since 1988, it's actually 686 acre feet a year. This town has done an amazing job with their efficiency. They've done an amazing job with their saving. None of that is included. And one of my biggest concerns right now is there's enough water for everyone if we rely on efficiency or the WRF. If you can do it with efficiency and demand reduction alone, why do you need this project? This is a concern, because the Coastal Commission is going to want to know the justification. And I don't see that in here. I didn't see it in the Urban Water Management Plan or in the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. So I have concerns, and I really want to see this project get permitted. The last thing I'll say before I run out of time is this board, one of the reasons that Director Funky Blue counted the days was this board declared a Water Code 350 emergency. If you're saying that a Water Code 350 emergency correlates with 4, 5, and 6 stages, shouldn't you be in at least stage 4 or undeclare the emergency Water Code 350 that this town has been under since 2001? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Dennis Dujic.
Thank you, Mr. President and board and staff. I guess I want to just say ditto, because I thought that was very artfully said. And so to keep my remarks short, I will say that. And I will also say that I understand the fear of being too specific in your language in your project description for the WRF. I understand that there's value in giving yourself some wiggle room, giving yourself some space down the road. You certainly don't want to be so specific that you get yourself in a box down the road. Technically, that's important. But I think it's also important to be clear with the Coastal Commission when they see this application, so that they understand that this project description describes a unit that will serve existing authorized water connections, and as part of, and I'll quote here, as part of future operations, evaluations will be conducted through research studies, biological assessments, and consideration of impacts on other stakeholders. These assessments will determine whether the WRF is sufficient to fulfill existing commitments. Well, that's really, really vague. And if I were at the Coastal Commission, the first thing I would ask is, what are those existing commitments? And be specific. What commitments are you talking about? Are you talking about the 700 people on the wait list? Are you talking about growth? You know, some kind of future growth, or some other commitments that you've made? So I understand it's difficult, and I understand it requires some level of tact and being careful. But I think this is not going to get you what you are looking for, which is to get your permit approved. So you want to answer those questions up front that they're going to ask, I think. Put enough information either in the project description or in a reference document that you can point to that says, here's the commitments we're talking about. And I think that's pretty much it for this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, Christine Heinrichs.
Good afternoon. Thank you for bringing this to a public hearing. After hiring another contractor, SWCA, for another $10,958, this project description fails in several ways to address significant concerns about the project, some of which have already been mentioned. Referring to the county's information hold on the application submitted in 2020, the first item on the county's list of deficiencies is that it, quote, is unclear about whether the impacts to riparian, wetland, and stream areas as designated as environmentally sensitive habitat area have adequate mitigations. The staff response to comments on exactly that point by both Coastal Commission Senior Environmental Scientist Tom Luster and Senior County Planner Shani Siang is to brush it off as not within the scope. Well, that's what the permitting agencies require. Failing to address ESHA in the coastal development permit application is going to get the same response as the previous incomplete permit application. Although the description and accompanying documents discuss modeling effects of operating the project on habitat, the description has no actual biological studies. They were due a year and a half ago and have been postponed, as I understand it, because the scope of the project changed. This sounds implausible to me. Could no studies have been done? At any rate, this leaves the CDP application lacking biological studies that would inform the required adaptive management plan. No actual fish or frogs are included in the document. Considering that habitat for rare and endangered species is one of the significant concerns of the agencies involved, lacking appropriate documentation seems likely to cause yet another delay in approving the permit application. This description fails to address the growth-inducing effects of the project. It's probably zero, since the plant doesn't produce much actual water, and the existing residents and habitat need it. I defer to other commenters who will come, including Crosby Swartz, to document that, but addressing it with vague, imprecise statements such as, but during future operations, impact assessments would be determined based on research studies, biological assessments, and impacts to other stakeholders to determine whether this mechanism would be adequate to serve existing commitments, fail to account for that. The document should be clear, and I expect the county and the Coastal Commission will require it to state that the intent is not to produce additional water that could be used to justify adding any new
Excuse me,
connections.
3 minutes are up, please. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Just 3 minutes are up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Next, we have Jim Townsend. Thank you, Jim. Mr. Townsend?
My name is Jim Townsend. I live on Lodge Hill. And before I get into my comments, I just wanted to give a personal shout out to both the field staff and the fire department of CCSD, who did an incredible job over the last 2 weeks of keeping everything up and running with this insane weather. You know, you can disagree on policy, but their practice has been fabulous, and that needs to be acknowledged. So I'm doing that. Hope I'm not using up my time here. President Gray and members of the board there, I have reviewed the draft project description for the WRF being considered by the board today. I'll admit to being a bit surprised and concerned that in spite of clear direction from the board of directors, staff and their consultants have once again delivered a project proposal that goes way beyond providing drought protection for existing users. My concerns are with the summary project description on page 2, the project component matrix on page 10, and the water reclamation facility purpose on pages 18 and 19. In all 3 sections, the sentence, "These assessments will determine whether the WRF is sufficient to fulfill existing commitments," should be deleted. This sentence is phase 3 of the July 2023 project description that was rejected by this board. What would qualify as an existing commitment anyway? Is the water waitlist an existing commitment? Is the funding with the associated multi-million-dollar build-out reduction plan also an existing commitment? What about the lot owners who have technically legal lots without utility service? With this language, a future board can consider a multitude of new users to be existing commitments. The last sentence on page 18 of the draft reads, "The WRF is designed to provide a reliable water supply to the CCSD's service connections." Given that the facility was actually designed to provide drought protection for existing users, that sentence needs to be modified or deleted. I also suggest that cost be inserted as an impact on stakeholders to be evaluated. It's not fair to existing users to pay dramatically higher water and sewer rates to bail out speculative lot purchasers. Beyond the unknown but likely high operational cost of the WRF, including the cost of brine disposal, the project component matrix shows on page 11 an increase from 2 to 6 on the on-site employees. That's a big increase. I don't know who's been giving advice to whoever drafts these documents, staff, consultants, legal counsel, who knows? But given that it's been nearly 10 years and millions spent with no real progress, maybe it's time to start listening to the ratepayers instead and deliver the drought protection for existing users promised back in 2014. Thanks very much.
Thank you. That completes the number of speaker cards I have. I will go to Ms. Dodson to see if anybody wants to speak on Zoom.
Yes, Crosby and Laura Swartz, followed by Daryl Robinson.
Crosby and Laura Swartz, go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is Crosby first, and Laura would have a comment following. Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, and staff present. The draft WRF project description under consideration today contains statements about the amount of potable water that the WRF will add to the district's water supply at San Simeon Creek. For example, Table 1 on page 10 states that 250 acre-feet per year will be added to the water supply. And Table 2 on page 19 states that 400 gallons per minute will be added to the water supply. These performance claims seem high, as noted below. We recommend additional groundwater modeling to verify overall WRF performance before this draft project description is submitted for approval. Here's a basic performance analysis. The main source of water added to the San Simeon Creek aquifers during the dry season is approximately 278 gallons per minute, which is also 400,000 gallons per day of secondary treated effluent from the district's wastewater treatment plant. This water is pumped into the San Simeon Creek percolation pond, creating a hydraulic mound in the surrounding groundwater level. Project well 9P7 is located next to the percolation pond, and it pumps water from the mound into the WRF purification system, and then on to the project injection well RIW1. If the continuous pumping rate from 9P7 well is 278 gallons per minute, the WRF is successfully adding 127 gallons per minute of purified water to the district's water supply. For this analysis, we assumed that 100 gallons per minute is being diverted for lagoon mitigation and 40 gallons per minute for Warren Ranch use. 11 gallons per minute is being trucked away for disposal. If the continuous pumping rate from the 9P7 well exceeds 278 gallons per minute, the WRF is not adding any additional water to the supply, but is simply moving existing aquifer water from well 9P7 to well RIW1. Table 2 on page 19 of the project description states that 581 gallons per minute will be pumped from well 9P7. This discrepancy between 9P7 well pumping rates must be resolved before the project description is submitted for approval. A temporary fix might be to add a disclaimer to table 2 stating that the pumping flows shown represent peak allowable flows, not expected continuous pumping rates, and they cannot be used to predict what is added by the WRF operation. We have submitted a detailed description of expected WRF performance and a WRF water flow diagram and recommendations for new groundwater modeling by email to the general manager and utilities manager. We are always available to answer any questions.
Yep.
Thank you for your consideration of my comment. Laura also has a comment.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, Laura Swartz.
Yeah, President Gray and everybody else. Mine is more of an overall concern. I've also read the draft. I'm looking at the inaccuracies, the exaggerations, the deletions, and questions. And I can do this all in 2.5 minutes that I have left. Okay, first of all, it states that the county told us that we had to get a permanent permit to run it at will. And that's not what it said. The county in 2014 didn't tell us we needed a new permit in 90 days to turn the machine on at will, only to make the emergency permit permanent. So we didn't have to come back to the Coastal Commission or the county each time an emergency drought operation had to occur. Okay, it was sold as an insurance policy only for existing customers, as voiced by Gail Robinette when she was president, and we know how long ago that was. Okay, and my one of the problems I have here, the question is, it's in writing. In normal years, we would only have to run it July through September. What do you mean by that? We haven't had to use it for 9 years. Why now? If it's a normal rainy season, why would we use it all of a sudden? Okay, and on the zero discharge, to me, the exaggeration that's in this report, it's like 1 truck per week of salts or brine if we have it, or 3 to 4 trucks a day if we don't. Well, this zero discharge, I'm sorry, has not even been proven in our area, and I'm not sure it's been proven in any areas. So why did the staff go beyond a direction? This is my question for the application that they talked about in April or July. I mean, the board said that they wanted it for existing customers only, and everybody agreed on that. So now the staff and the consultant comes back with something else. Well, there's so many meetings and so much confusion. We've gone through meeting after meeting from beginning to end. And it happens so often that the board will tell us something and pass, sign contracts, and then they change it again. So we're frustrated. I think you can hear that in my voice. The other thing, they did not say anything about mitigation with the BRP. So this report, again, it has inaccuracies, exaggerations, has deletions, and it has questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Ms. Dodson.
Daryl Robinson, followed by Matthew and Elizabeth Benthausen.
Okay, Daryl Robinson first, thanks.
Thank you, Board President and staff. I'm Daryl Robinson, President of United Lot Owners of Cambria for over 20 years now. And thanks for pointing that out, Amanda. I just want to echo the comments here from multiple perspectives on the last sentence in the paragraph on water reclamation facility purpose. There is nuance in that is going to have to be clarified before this gets finalized. And I would particularly point out where the final sentence in that paragraph, beginning of it, says satisfy existing connections. And then in the future, depending on findings, it could serve existing commitments. And we could talk all day on the definition of that, but in our view, existing commitments include the water wait list. So that's a subject of another discussion, but I think it needs to be clarified here that however you choose to say it, that once it's up and operating and proves to be functional, this facility puts water into the system, and the existing commitments to the water wait list lot owners have rights to water out of that system. So trying to differentiate and portion off one of the sources of water that your district has and say only we existing current connections have the right to water from it, that just doesn't work. And I think staff knows that, and that's why this wording comes out the way it is, because you cannot partition off part of your water supply and say some people have a right to it and other people don't. That's really just a weak excuse for no growth. That's my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Up next is
Matthew, followed by Elizabeth Benhausen.
Matthew, please.
Hello, board members. My name is Matthew Ortiz, and I want to echo what Daryl Robinson and Amanda Rice said. I'm in support of what they said. I've been a lot owner since 2006. On a personal level, I'm married with 2 kids. It was always a dream of mine to live in Cambria, but that has obviously not occurred. We're in 2024. I just, again, I agree 100% with Daryl. I've been at this, trying to do what we can to participate in the Cambria community by paying property tax, by cleaning our lots when the fire department says that we need to. And I just implore the board to think of us, the lot owners, because we are people, we're not speculators. I'm not a speculator. I just want to live in that community. And this was the means that I thought myself and my family could. But that's it for my comments. Thank you, board members, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Next up would be Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Ms. Bettenhausen?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The draft coastal development permit project description for the water reclamation facility needs much more work to be submitted as a draft to SLO County. Several reasons are heightened here. Zero liquid discharge. Why must we wait until at least excuse me, I've got a very small copy because you switched me faster. We must wait until at least the pilot test is done before submitting the DPD. We have no indication whether the discharge will work until this happens, as is evident in the following passages. And I quote in this, pages 11 twice, page 15 twice, page 18, page 16, and finally, and under the ZLD program is completed, it is unknown how much concentrate will be produced during normal and dry year operations, page 16. This also assumes that the pilot project will cost the district nothing. But if the pilot project discloses that it is not, quote, inefficient, ineffective, and otherwise unable to be utilized, page 15, what will the new project cost? What is the updated cost of the trucking and receipt from the South District, given the possibility that we cannot do ZLD? Number two, the language for currently existing users is very vague and possibly contradictory. And I quote three different language that has been quoted by many people before about existing commitments. If the WRF is insufficient to serve existing commitment customers, then what? What if the WRF is consistently sufficient to serve existing customers and the ZLD does not get turned on? Is this still stage one, April 2023 discussion? Does existing commitments include the wait list for the approximately 650 new customers, for example? Item 3, the 4 attachments to the DPD are included, but in no place is their standing given. How are they to be interpreted? What role do they have? This is an important matter because Stillwater and Todd contradict each other at various points. In the 4th attachment, all of the comments were made in April 2023 or earlier, almost a year before the current version of the DPD.
Excuse me, Ms. Bettenhausen, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Dodson, any more speakers?
No.
Okay. Well, without further comment from the anybody hasn't spoken yet, I
do have written comment.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We have quite a bit of written comment. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes, proceed with the written comment.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
The first written comment is from Bob Fountain. Honorable Directors, my name is Bob Fountain, and I'm a 17-year Cambria resident. Regarding the CCSD staff draft project description submitted today, I am recommending that the board reject this draft project description and direct staff to follow the board's direction. I am concerned that staff and management are disregarding the direction given by the board to them back in April and July of 2023 to modify the project description to only phase 1 pertaining to providing water from the WRF for existing customers during emergency drought situations. The staff continues to include in this draft additional phases for addressing the brine waste with a potential but not verified approach, zero liquid discharge, and an additional phase allowing for growth. The consultant for the board in 2019 advised them that a regular permit had a higher level of success if focused solely on the original purpose in phase 1, existing customers during drought conditions. Despite this, the staff and management continues to submit to the board these additional phases in the project description. I believe that the board needs to make it crystal clear to CCSD staff and management that they are to follow the board's direction, and if that's not done, then an appropriate rebuke to those responsible is in order. Bob Fountain.
Thank you.
The next written comment is from Tim Bourdin. Regarding connections served, this was initially voted on and approved for existing water connections during stage 3 drought conditions. This new proposal mentions that assessments will determine whether the WRF is sufficient to fulfill existing commitments. What are these existing commitments? Are they in writing? Can you provide me with a copy of these commitments? Shouldn't this be resubmitted to the voters as you are proposing to change the voted on use of the facility? Regarding operations, it was voted on that there would be an existing employee to perform visual inspections of the site twice a day. No new employees. The new proposal allows for up to 6 employees per day in shifts. Are these existing employees or new hires? If they are new hires, that will be cost, including training, benefits, salaries, tools, and equipment. Regarding brine salt disposal, how much is the zero liquid discharge facility going to cost? This technology has not been tested per the WRF Concentrate Disposal Ad Hoc Committee dated 11/8/2023. How many truckloads of the brine concentrate will be hauled away and at what cost? If the ZLD facility is not successful, how many truckloads per day will be hauled away and at what cost? Sorry, I have a bunch.
Okay, it's okay.
I want to make sure I'm not missing any. And the last written comment is from Paul Wellenkamp. This is a citizen comment in connection with the February 8th public hearing on the draft project description for the WRF permit application. I'm a Cambria homeowner and part-time resident since 2005. I have been regularly visiting Cambria since 1990. I have the following comments and questions. First, the application refers to serving existing connections as a primary intent for operating the WRF. Possibly serving additional connections is another intent. It is unclear whether serving additional connections is another primary intent or a secondary intent. Characterizing serving existing connections as a primary intent implies that there are other intents or purposes. The application fails to adequately describe them. Second, the application refers to possibly serving existing commitments in the future, but fails to describe what those commitments are. Existing connections has an ambiguous meaning. Existing commitments does not. The application does not even vaguely describe what is meant by possibly serving those additional connections. Third, the application serves far more capacity than appears to necessarily relieve drought emergencies. If I understand the materials, drought relief may require operating the WRF several hours per day for 4 months per year or thereabouts. The application seeks 24/7 for 6 months without guidelines as to when it'll operate short of that. Since its inception, the question about whether the WRF will be used only to relieve drought emergencies for existing connections or whether it will provide the capacity to serve additional connections has been unanswered. This draft does not provide a clear answer. The substantial additional capacity this application seeks will result in an unknown or undisclosed number of additional connections. A description which is more clearly and directly addresses the issue may be a difficult ask, but it is sorely needed. Paul Wellenkamp. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dodson. So now I will return it to the board. If you have any more questions and comments, we're not going to be taking action today, but we're going to, I think it's fair to say we will, if we have any suggestions for any changes, clarifications, and so forth, I'll bring this back to General Manager McElhaney, because I think some questions have been raised in the public comment too. But I want to basically give staff, I want us to give staff direction essentially as to how we go forward, and that might involve some comments and clarifications or requests for clarification. But General Manager McElhaney, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. I just wanted to touch base and kind of circle back in. There were 3 different things that occurred with staff when it came to this project description. Staff's initial guidance, working with the our consultant, but also working in lockstep with the ad hoc committee, which consists of 2 board members. So there were a lot of public comments about staff as if we were operating in a vacuum. We worked with President Gray, former President, Director Dean, and we all worked on this project description. So I just want to defend staff to some extent, that this was not staff operating autonomously, creating a document outside the scope of board knowledge. Thank you.
Director Dean.
Okay, there's a correction that I'd like to point out that's needed, and it's on page 18, the 3rd paragraph from the bottom. This, where it's the 3rd and 4th paragraph from the bottom. This says that it could generate 17.67 acre-feet of water per year. It should be per month. And the next paragraph mentions 35.4 acre-feet of water per year, and that should be per month. And even though so many of us practically memorized this document, we failed to notice it, and it had to take some fresh pair of eyes on it to spot it. So
thank you, Director Dean. We've already started to make those adjustments.
Thank you.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So a lot of comments about what does existing commitments mean? And I do believe that that needs to be very carefully defined in this document. So I would just recommend that you look into how you might do that.
Thank you. Any response or from either General Manager McElhaney or Mr. Green, just for clarification or whatever?
Well, again, this is a draft. This is a living document. This is the iterative process that we'll be going through with the county, taking their requests and obviously their suggestions, and that will help shape and form the final draft or the final submittal of this. Running the WRF it's necessary. Besides just in an emergency situation, we need to validate its efficacy during scenarios of operation during different seasons to see what true impacts we have on the environment in the San Simeon Creek and what impacts we might have on the Van Gordon as well. The only way we're going to be able to validate that is by operating it, by doing biological assessments and tests and evaluations during the operations of it. These are just two simple scenarios of minimum operation and large-scale operation in extreme drought conditions. And somewhere in the middle, hopefully, we can find a happy medium.
Okay. I had one question for staff, actually, from Mr. Green, probably primarily, just for clarification of the relationship between the two documents, the two attached documents, the operational plan and the Stillwater Sciences stream flow study plan. The inclusion of them with this document, there is an interchange. There's an interplay between the two, and maybe you can understand. You can explain that.
Are you speaking to the document that are from Stillwater's?
The Stillwater Sciences, the Stillwater, and the typical memorandum, and the operational, the two of them, the one from Todd Groundwater and Stillwater Sciences, and how they basically relate to the primary document we're looking at.
What we were looking at with that when or how to operate, that's providing specific metrics on which we measure on when to start and then when to terminate running during that season. And I think it spells it out. This is quite nicely. This is prepared by Gus Yates for Todd Groundwater. This is after decades of modeling, even prior to the WRF's installation. Right now, we need data while it's running. That's the key data that we're missing. We have several years of dry season and wet season data, but none of which are indicating any operation.
Yeah. Thank you. Any further comments, questions from the board? Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. A lot of content. A couple of things that will be useful are to have. It's great to see the operating scenarios that staff has defined, within this document. The 5 by 12, 5 days, 12 hours. And the 5 by 24. I think a lot in the community will want to see the estimated incremental costs. You've given us the incremental production from those scenarios, so that's awesome. A lot of folks are going to be interested in what the incremental cost in those operating scenarios are. That probably does not belong in the project description. That's not going to get the permit approved, but the community will want to see that. I think the last fiscal year budget was about $1.2 million for the WRF. And our yield is 0, so we can run the numbers, the dollars per gallon. That's infinite. What we don't know is the yield, and we will never know the yield until we have an operating permit. Our current conditions restrain us to running the WRF at the point where it's really too late to yield a benefit from it. We're already in such a dire situation. So the intent, it's good to bring us back to the intent is to enable the district. The board giving direction to staff on when it's time to operate this facility to increase the volume in the San Simeon groundwater basin. And that takes some runtime. So the ability to get the facility started ahead is crucial, and that's what this permit does. And a question to ask, a lot of energy about the growth-inducing aspects, but we're asking for a permit to enable the district to operate this facility. Nowhere in here is the intent. This does not commit the district to issue intent to serve letters. If at any time the data that's gathered, and it's important, kind of a full disclosure and being transparent, the recognition that we'll gather data from running the facility whenever we can run it, and that data will inform future decisions. Those decisions will come to the board. So correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, this does not commit the district one way or the other regarding issuance of water meters.
Thank you, Director Thomas, and I appreciate that dialogue because there was some comments about staff not following board direction, and so if this discussion continues today, I'd appreciate some clarity on that direction that the board is guiding us in, because that is our interpretation, that we are to fully permit it, to be able to run it and find out its effects on our environment, what it can yield, safe yield, and then from there, those policy decisions will be made by the board. But as staff is, our position is that per the strategic plan and the guidance from this board is we are to get this fully permitted and find out what it is capable of doing.
And I would say that's a very fair assessment where the board still is. I would say one thing, I want to say one thing to follow up on Director Thomas's very useful comment on what this permit is asking for and what we are promising, or whatever we're doing in the process of applying for it. It is only to actually find, basically run the project or run the WRF in variety of situations to find out how it actually affects the environment, how it actually improves the environment in some cases, some situations, and how much water it produces. And the big issue that all feeds into, the big question that all feeds into is, well, what, and I think General Manager McElhenney used the term safe yield. We'd say, what is in fact, based on evidence, based on science, and based on data that we now collect, we'll be able to collect, what is in fact the amount of water that we can safely extract from that aquifer? And right now there's all sorts of opinions all over the place, and there's all sorts of modeling that suggests an answer. We do not know what we can safely extract from San Simeon without some non-mitigatable environmental impacts. That's the key. If we're not impacting the environment in a negative way, or if we can't mitigate impacts, we can't pump any more than a certain amount. And so all the questions about new connections, growth, and so forth, they're subordinate to this question of what we can safely pull out of the aquifer. We have to find that out first before any decisions are made going forward. So maybe that helps just, it's my defense of the vagueness of some of the language, because we really don't know what we're capable of serving at this point. How many connections we're capable of serving until we've seen how this works. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I want to underscore how important what you just said, Director Thomas, and you, President Gray, how important that is. And I'm wondering if that can be put into an introductory paragraph for this permit, to say those things specifically, because that is what we want. We want to know the answers so that we can make good decisions in the future. So that would be my comment.
Yes, Vice President. And I'm open to input on that, but I think that'd be well codified in like a staff report. But as far as the technical document, I don't know, and I can defer to Mr. Green, but depending on the direction we go with that in terms of our community being informed versus the technical document at the county level, I don't know which place it would reside better.
Mr. Green, you want to say something, or did you?
I just want to receive direction. Am I looking to make an OpEx, cost of operation, staff report?
We don't know that. I wouldn't say that at this time.
Yeah, my comment
But,
on that
yeah.
was that there'll come a time, like, we're not being asked to approve this this is a draft. It's going to come back. That will be a great time to be able to answer, to have basically a data sheet on each operating scenario, your 5 by 12 and your 5 by 24 scenario, the expected yields, because it's uncertain, the expected costs, estimates, because it'll be uncertain, but that'll be a question that will be on everyone's minds. And it's also worth noting, I think there was some mention of the lack of environmental impact specificity in the project description, but the attachments listed on page 19, if I'm not mistaken, are by attachment part of the project description, and these are all available and will be provided to the county and to the public when it comes back, correct?
Yes, Director Thomas. And then the county will also have an updated adaptive management plan that will address some of our mitigation efforts, correct, Mr. Green?
Well, this list just gets my head spinning about the number of pages, and I'm just wondering if we can have some way to have links and review it online, but I wonder if it's less than 1,000 pages, the net total of these attachments, but that's just getting me speculating, and if there's a way to save paper, but that's another conversation.
I think the question will have to be how much that is in a staff report attached to the technical document, i.e. the project description, and how much it will be in the project description. I have a feeling the project description is going to stay fairly narrowly focused on the actual operation and what we're asking county to approve. All the other issues that the public is going to be very interested in, we can obviously air those in documents that are parallel when we bring this back. But I think this document that we're looking at today probably should stay fairly close to where it is in terms of its focus and what it covers, I would think. Any other board? Dr. Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. First I want to thank, no matter how many, let's say, complications or slight criticisms have been made of this document, I still want to thank the ad hoc committee and the staff that did a lot of work to put this together. I don't think it's been an easy process for them at all, just like it hasn't been an easy process for the last 10 years for the ratepayers of this community to have to expend a lot of money on this facility that was built 10 years ago, basically for emergency situations, during drought conditions, built in an environmentally sensitive habitat area, and 10 years later still doesn't have a permit. And just the idea of like putting all those facts together kind of boggles the mind, especially since I think as Director Thomas was just alluding to the cost of the facility just last year, in the annual budget. So we're running at about $16 million right now as to the cost, and we're only halfway to paying off the facility and actually buying it back from the bank that owns it. So first I want to point out a couple of items here, and that's with regard to, well, when is this facility actually built, or at least the first date of construction, which might give us an idea as to, well, how well, and I'm not criticizing anyone here. It's easy to get things muddled up when we're dealing with a situation such as this. So if we look at page 3 of 19 or page 7, it says, this is in the second paragraph, I guess you would say, the CCSD commenced construction on the EWSP, the Emergency Water Supply Project, on August 25th, 2014. If we go to page 11 of 19, down near the bottom, where it says construction commencement, it says May 22nd, 2014. In the study that I did, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, or even more. I believe the date is May 20th, having read that in more than one document over the years. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just pointing out because people are talking about the vagueness in this document. Also, before I get to the item as to when this should be operated or the points that are being made around that, on page 15 of 19 down near the bottom where it says, under prolonged dry weather conditions, the WRF could run 24/7 during this driest time of the year for approximately 6 months. I'd really like to know how we know that. How do we actually know that this facility could actually run consistently for 6 months? And I'd also like to know the harm that it would do environmentally, the harm it would do economically to this community, if in fact that was ever done, and if I would even question if it never even needs to be done. And with regard to when the operation of this needs to take place, I believe it was Ms. Schwartz who pointed out, where it says here, this is in the middle of page 18 of 19, water reclamation facility hours of operation. During normal precipitation years, it is anticipated that operation of the WRF would begin in July and run until September. Well, we've had normal precipitation years for as long as I've lived here. We've had very dry precipitation years that I've lived here, and we've had a heck of a lot of rain some years that I've lived here. And we've survived all of them. And for this statement to say, during normal precipitation years, we'd run this for 2 to 3 months. Why? Now, I can understand if we need to run this to get clarification on the data required to actually submit the coastal development permit, that I can understand. But to say that we would run this, I'm assuming this would be if we got it permitted, and we would run it when we haven't needed it yet. And that's just my take on it. And also, and I realize these aren't the exact same statements, but so I just read where it said, 2 or 3 months. And then it says down here, the plant would not need to be operated during wet or normal rainfall periods. Now, actually, rainfall periods could mean any part of the year as opposed to an entire year. But the point I'm trying to make, and I'm sure I'm going to forget something that I also want to comment on, is that, first off, let me say this. I am not going to get into why this project was built in the first place. Although, if you look in this document here, it went from for existing customers only during drought periods and not for growth, to the possibility of, how could we say it, issuing intent to serve letters. Having been someone who's lived here for 3.5 decades plus, and talking with other folks that have lived here a long time, the sense of frustration over this entire circumstance, economically, environmentally, the tremendous amount of work that our staff has had to do as a result of this facility is really heartbreaking. And I don't know there's probably more that I want to say. There were comments made in April 20th of last year with regard to this facility. This was made at that time by the utilities manager, our temporary general manager, where he said, removing the growth-inducing aspects of the permit, will basically move the permit along, but then we would move forward with controlled growth. And I guess I'm just saying all this, and I'm probably saying too much, and my apologies for that. The confusion that enters into this project, it's just, I hesitate to continue to use the word heartbreaking, but I think I'm like a lot of people in this town. We love this community. What it represents, the specialness of it all, is just something you just wrap your arms around and appreciate and count your blessings that you live here every day. And the fact that we're having to deal with something like this 10 years after this project was built, and who knows how much longer before it gets permitted and is actually tested. Like I said, it's just, it's heartbreaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. If there's no further comment, I think we'll close this item. I think we've sort of aired some of the questions that we have that will go into the process of producing the final document. Mr. McElhenney?
President Gray, do you want me to expand on two of the sections that Director Farmer was commenting on about normal precipitation?
Yes, please.
And Mr. Green can say it more eloquently than I can, but and we can always rephrase it to where it's a little more clear, but during normal precipitation years, it's anticipated the operation of WRF would begin in July and run until September. That's our dry season. And then that next paragraph, the plant would not need to be operated during the wet or normal rainfall periods except for gradient control purposes to prevent saltwater intrusion into the freshwater aquifer. That's referring to the periods outside of July and September. And so we can frame that a little bit better next go around.
Any other? Great, thank you. Well, thank you everyone who commented and came here to discuss this issue. And as we've explained, it'll be back at some point for another look, and when we finalize the application. I think we can move on now to the item 5B, relocated in our agenda to the first position in regular business, which is the discussion and consideration of the strategic plan update. I don't know if Mr. McElhenney wants to just give a brief introduction to it.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 5B, discussion and consideration of strategic plan update. There's no fiscal impact associated with the item. The board held a special meeting on January 30th, 2023 and adjourned to January 31st, 2023 to update their strategic plan. Then adopted the updated plan on February 16th, 2023. This effort included a review of those underlying objectives and to be primarily accomplished over the next 6 months. And I'll turn it over to the board.
Yeah, so what we've done in the past, which we'll continue to do, is break this up, I guess, into strategic goals. There's a set of, if you go through this grid, you'll notice there's a set of large topical headings, and they are, I think, how many strategic goals? There's meet the ongoing challenges of effectively and reliably managing water resources in our sensitive ecosystem, advance coastal development permit to achieve county and coastal commission approval, execute plan phased repairs and upgrades to the wastewater treatment system, and provide optimal fire protection, water rescue, and emergency medical services on a 24/7 basis, and manage and provide stewardship of district assets, parks, recreation, and open space in a timely, cost-effective, environmentally sensitive manner. So what we will do is go through each of these topic areas, and I'll have staff explain the red line, the red type sections, which indicate a change from the last time we reviewed this. We're doing this on a quarterly basis now, so these are things that have been changed over the last quarter. So maybe start out water services general. If you can go ahead and just explain the changes.
Thank you, President Gray. Implement the water meter replacement program. We didn't have an original target date for that. We now have updated that target completion date to fourth quarter 2024. On 8/10, obviously, the board approved the procurement of materials, and that is in progress. We have completed the contract for billing, integration, and training. We're finalizing inventory. There's been some supply chain issues with some of the water meter parts. We have installed 10 endpoints, and we are now collecting data on those. And our first stage is to start updating the registers in June of 2024. So that's an update to the fourth quarter 2024 when we hope to have that program fully rolling. And if there's no questions,
move on to
Stewart Street tank construction. The board did approve the contract with MKN, that's going to be going before R&I, I believe, Monday, correct? For a presentation, even though it's already been approved. The permit duration expected to be 4 to 8 months. Once that permitting is completed, the RFP for installation will ensue. You mind if I give the update?
Yeah, I was just going to say we have an update, so yeah.
Do you want to give it?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
We met with MKN on site for the Stewart Street tanks. Our hope had been that we would be able to use the existing foundation that the two tanks are on. That foundation is about 18 inches in depth. With the new current codes and the installation of the new tanks, the engineers pretty much let us know that those are going to be insufficient foundations for the new tanks. So we'll be looking at new foundations. Additionally, with the current construction of those tanks, they're about 5 feet apart, which makes construction really difficult when you're trying to tear down one tank and keep one online. And so now there's some discussion within the parameters of our grant. We're working with the EPA to reach out and get some more details on that, whether or not it will affect our grant funding, but we're looking at relocating that tank a little bit towards directionally, I don't know if that's south, but moving it, potentially 10 feet over to the right, which will have us adjust a retaining wall. But so we're going to be looking at those things, which might slow the project down a little bit moving forward. Did I miss anything?
Right, well, not just moving just because of installation, but there's also periodic maintenance throughout the years. They're so close together, you can't get any scaffolding in there to do any existing coating or repairs or any maintenance on that. So it would just, and it also doesn't meet California building code anymore. So we will be doing some geotechnical work to establish and validate if the current existing foundations we have will be adequate or not. It's looking like they won't be. We use now can you imagine 3 foot long, 1/2 inch thick dowels that secure it down for seismic fitment. And that just probably won't take with that 18-inch day pad that we have right now, so.
Continue with the, well, actually, maybe we'll have questions from the board at the end of each of these topic areas, so we don't have too many interruptions. Okay. But just go down the list and to the finish of this section.
Okay, so with the Stewart Street tank, we're still targeting fourth quarter 2024. However, with these new changes, there could be some updates to that time frame. Hopefully not. Moving down to the permanent replacement of San Simeon water line and the fluid line, we updated target for that would be fourth quarter 2025. We are doing the preliminary design review, or it is completed, I believe, and it's being sent to the R&I committee. Is that Monday as well? Yeah, we'll have that on Monday. Moving on to researching long-term water storage. We just updated that to make it clear to the public that that's ongoing, will continue to be ongoing. The ad hoc committee and staff are currently reviewing all different areas to increase our water portfolio. So there was some discussion about that had stopped. It has not.
Any questions?
No, I just wanted to
Dean, yeah.
clarify that the ad hoc committee is going to be giving a report on 3 new options that we have researched for supplemental water supply at Monday's R&I meeting, and we are continuing to pursue any opportunity we come across for supplemental water.
I have a question for Director Dean. Is that actually in the agenda packet for the meeting now?
Yes,
This
I
Monday?
believe,
Good.
I believe it is.
If you go to for members of the public, if you go to our website, to the R&I Resources and Infrastructure Committee meeting agenda for next week.
For Monday.
You'll see the report there.
Yes.
I was going to ask about that too, but what that committee's been doing, or that subcommittee's been doing. Thank you. Any other questions on this section?
All right.
Seeing none, we continue to, we can pick it up later, yeah. This will be the advancing the CDP, and I think we've actually talked a little bit about it already, some of the stuff we're doing, but you can go down the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did cover quite a bit of it, but as far as target dates, we're looking at first quarter 2025 in terms of the potential for zero liquid discharge. We did meet with Clark Easter and talked about some of the things that were going on in terms of that pilot project. They're actually building, or they had to get some of their financing mechanisms cleared through the Department of Energy, and then they are going to start constructing the pilot what do you call it? The actual pilot
yeah.
system. And then once that's completed, we'll be moving forward with the piloting. As far as if the pilot works for us, and then they think about, you know, how big it needs to be and how large it needs to be to actually be permanently installed, that's, you know, obviously going to be a discussion for the board policy-wise and budget-wise later on. But we're targeting first quarter 2025 for that. Board approval of zero liquid discharge pilot testing program. Again, that'll come before you when we get the pilot and it's ready to go, and we're still targeting second quarter 2024. In-stream flow study, task 1, to include Van Gordon Creek. We have the preliminary report on that in-stream flow study. We're still targeting second quarter 2024 for that to be completed. Complete the CDP application. I think we talked about that quite a bit. So with the hope that we our informal discussions with the county and get their input on our draft project description. With those comments, some of the comments that were made here today, again, we'll bring it back to the board and the ad hoc committee another time. We would still like to target the second quarter of 2024 to get that project description approved and submitted to county. So I think we're on target for that. Moving on to, I'm going to go to execute phased repairs and upgrades for the wastewater treatment system.
Go ahead with that, please. Thank you.
Sliding down, monitor project expenditures, performance during the construction phase. We have an ongoing monthly review of project expenditures with our utilities manager, wastewater superintendent. It's not much of an update there. CIP wastewater project list, not in the SST. In terms of establishing priorities, we're still targeting second quarter 2024. And the ad hoc committee from R&I is still on target with that.
First, I want to make sure we're not missing anybody's questions. Mr. Director Thomas, did you want to ask a question at some point? Yet? Okay. Pause for questions, yeah. Pause for questions. I want to make sure we pause enough. Okay, we're going. We'll go forward with the, I guess we got the.
Provide optimal fire protection.
Fire protection, yes.
Water rescue and emergency medical services. So update the CCS board to any and all changes of evacuation planning within the district. Again, that is ongoing. We're still working on our evacuation route and working with some of our constituents in the community with that. That is ongoing. Report on development of procedures for evacuation of residents needing extra help. Our fire chief is working with the county OES on notification processes for the residents, Project Genesis, things of that nature. That is ongoing. Prepare and provide the board a fire prevention plan for Cambria. We changed that target date to first quarter 2025 with a new fire chief in place and quite a bit to catch up on and to get acclimated to that role. We're giving a little more breathing room on that, and I'll be working closely with him and get him the support he needs. And all of the subsequent dates have changed under that header to the first quarter of 2025. So we're not asleep at the wheel on that one, but we're definitely, we're working on it. Fire chief did implement the Zone Haven system and emergency alert system in November 23. He is attending the Meet the GMs meetings at least for 3 to 4 hours to meet with any community members that have any questions about that. And handing out our little magnets, talking about which zone we're in. So at any time you have any questions about anything evacuation related, please come down and meet the fire chief. He's happy to speak with you. Review the budget policy. There's not much changes there.
Yes. Then the final strategic goal is the district assets, park recreation, and open space issues.
Yes, define future use and funding for the Veterans Hall. Fourth quarter 2024. That's kind of an ongoing discussion that has to do with efficiencies and revenues for the Vets Hall. Review of rental rates. So we are working with district staff on our update to our fee schedule. And so we're working with Bartle Wells on updating the CCC fee schedule, which will include our rental rates for the Vets Hall. So that there's a potential for an increase in those fees to help with that piece of the project. Skate park project. We're still targeting second quarter 2025 for breaking ground. We're currently in federal review on our Land Conservation Water Fund grant that we are one of 16 in the entire state of California to go to federal review. We're working through sacred land files and different permitting studies, but we are on track to have that grant funded, and we're hoping mid 2024 will be funded. We're working with county for permitting. We just had a meeting with county planning in terms of some of the waivers we submitted. I just updated you on the grant there. That's pretty much where we sit. Permitting. Updated you there. Oh, East Ranch restroom project. The minor use permit was submitted to the county in 9/14, and it's still under review. Unless there's any update on that.
Matt Varvel from the county planning reached back out to us and wanted to establish some other items like lighting, and we had another permit, not issue, but just request that we needed updating from our 2011. So those have been provided to him as of yesterday. So we're still doing the final lacing up of the requested information. So that's what's kind of extended out that period there.
Thank you. Any questions from board members, questions for clarification, whatever, before I turn this over to public comment? Okay, great.
I do have one.
Vice President Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that this is so easily reviewed in the new format. So thank you mostly to Director Thomas.
Thank you. Yes, it is a very clear display and organization of the information, which I think is really important.
It's nice to see original target date, and it's alarming to see how many of them no target date had been established when it first went on. And with this format, I don't believe that'll happen again. So accountability.
When you don't have a target date, you'll never get it done. I got two speaker slips for public comment here. One is from Dennis Dujic. Anyone come forward?
Thank you, Mr. President. May I quote you? If you don't have a target date, it'll never get done. Yeah. I love that. That needs to sink in a little. Sorry, I just couldn't help it. So you have my extensive comments, and I just wanted to read one of the paragraphs that I provided, and then maybe a little discussion. As stated in the CCSD strategic planning process approved 11/16/23, quote, in minor updates, the board will only review and update the objectives and supporting actions for each strategic goal. However, at the discretion of the board president, the board may consider refinements to other components in the plan as needed. All of the recommendations, so that's the end quote. So what I'm requesting today is the board president exercise that discretion so the board can and will consider and implement the associated strategic plan refinements during the 2024 strategic plan update. In other words, you're not limited to a minimal, we're in the interim period, so we're just going to make little adjustments. You know, if a big adjustment's needed, clearly you have the authority to make a big adjustment. One example of that, I mean, there's been many examples today by many people of things that things that could be done to improve the strategic plan, to add elements or modify elements. And by the way, let me say thank you to the R&I committee for continuing to move forward with supply alternatives. Thank you very much for doing that. That's very critical. However, we'd like to see I'd like to see more direction. If I were the staff, I'd like to see some more direction than just say, go study. Because if you don't have a time limit, it'll never get done. But one really urgent example is the flooding situation. The floods of last year and you know, the little bit of a teaser scare that we had this year. But going back to you know, as far as you want to go, you know, flood management and flood risk management is really critical. And since CCSD has the responsibility for managing the Fiscalini Ranch, it's important that the board provide direction to staff to move forward with appropriate flood risk management activities and report back to the board on their progress. So that's one example among the many that we've already heard today, where additional clearer board direction, including dates and timelines and that sort of thing, would, I think, be very helpful to staff and to Cambria. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Rice.
President Gray, board, staff. First, let me say, strategic planning, yes, finally. I'm so glad that this is continuing to happen. When I first joined the board, this was not a thing. I'm so glad it's being done. It is about time, and again, and deadlines. I'm so thankful. When I joined the board, there was no kind of roadmap at all that you could modify. So this is great. The water meter replacement program, super happy to see that. The fire hydrant maintenance program, extremely happy to see that going on. These are all things I wish had been implemented in 2014, but I don't know if something happened that year that we got distracted. I did want to point out that on the long-term storage and the CDP, and in relation to the fees for the district, you should really also be looking at connection fees, which do not currently include payments for that big loan that we had to get to build the facility. And I would hate to see people starting to build without having that connection fee actually accurately represent what that would mean. I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the next 2 years, but we all know how long a rate study can take. No reason to not undertake it as soon as possible, or at least let Bartle Wells know that it should be on the back burner. But again, thank you so much. I'm glad that there's a strategic plan. This board and district is much better for these kinds of things being discussed and happening.
Thank you. Ms. Dodson, anybody want to speak via Zoom?
Yes, Daryl Robinson.
Go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, board and staff, for letting me speak again. Daryl Robinson, president of United Lot Owners of Cambria. It was explained quite eloquently by Amanda earlier about the water supply or water meter moratorium. We've had an emergency water supply moratorium for over 20 years, and the district has a legal obligation to address it and remove the moratorium, because by definition, a moratorium is temporary. Unfortunately, there's no end date on it. And so therefore, as Dennis Tujic pointed out, it seems to never get done. But you do have an obligation to address this emergency. And that being the case, it's hard to understand why it is not listed in your strategic plan with the objective of resolving the emergency and getting the moratorium lifted. So I'd ask you to relook at this strategic plan and add that as one of your top objectives. That's all I have today.
Thank you very much. I would want to clarify, make sure we were on the right topic, because there's two topics having to do with strategic planning. This is on the update of the current plan. We are going to be doing public input on, which was item 5A, on what people want to see in the next strategic planning round. So the comments on 5B should stick with what we have on this grid here, essentially, and how we're making progress on it and so forth. So,
And I do have written comments for Daryl Robinson for the strategic plan.
Would it be for five?
For 5A.
Okay, 5A, good, yeah, yeah. Anybody else want to speak remotely?
No.
Okay, any written comment on 5B? No, yeah, 5B.
No.
Okay, thank you. Bring us back to the board. Anything we want to discuss here? And oh, okay, well, it's at 2:45. It's about the time we asked for a break. We'll come back to this for board discussion after a 10-minute break. Is that fine? Good, thank you.
Can I make a quick comment? I'm sorry. I neglected to say this at the beginning of my presentation in the last item. I thanked our staff and the ad hoc committee. I neglected to thank the many members of the community who actually arrived today via Zoom or here in person to speak on this item with regard to the coastal development permit application. So thanks to all of you.
Great. We'll adjourn until, let's say, 2:55. Thank you. The meeting is resuming at 2:57. We were at the point of bringing the discussion of item 5B back to the board for discussion, and I think our action here would be to receive the report. So I'll open it. Anybody on the board have any comments, suggestions, questions in the manner of where we go from here? Anyway, I guess this is a successful report. Well, no, we have to do have a discussion and consideration. So I think we need a motion just to accept the report, and we go from there. Director Dean.
You gonna promote me again?
Oh, I almost did. Yeah.
I move that we accept the strategic plan update as described.
Yeah. Yeah. Second.
Second.
So moving to seconded that this board receive the strategic plan update as presented. Can I have a roll call?
Yes. Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Now on to item 5A, which is a public input item. We're not taking action. We're just receiving public comment on the strategic plan process going forward. General Manager McElhenney, do you want to give it an introduction?
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 5A, receive community input for strategic plan accomplishments, current internal strengths, current internal weaknesses, opportunities and threats, analysis, and vision for Cambria. There's no fiscal impact associated with this item. It is recommended the Board of Directors receive community input on the areas below for the upcoming strategic plan workshop and confirm the current strategic planning process ad hoc committee of Directors Dean and Thomas. And they will organize the public input and provide that input into the strategic planning workshop.
Great.
Some of those questions that were put out to the community, if you'd like me to read them.
Sure, please.
Okay. Number one, what are the Cambria Community Service District's accomplishments since the January 31st, 2023 Strategic Planning Workshop? Number two, what are the Cambria Community Service District's current internal strengths? Number three, what are the Cambria Community Service District's current internal weaknesses and or challenges? What are the external factors, trends, that be economical, political, technological, health, and environmental, that will or might have a positive impact on the Cambria Community Service District? Number five, what are the external factors or trends, economic, health, technological, political, and environmental, that will or might have a negative impact on the Cambria Community Service District? And lastly, number six, please describe your vision of the Cambria we want for future generations to inherit.
Thank you very much. Since this is a public input session, I'm going to go straight to public comment. We have a card. I have three cards, actually. One is Debbie Black. Is she here still? Good. Please come forward, Ms. Black.
Good afternoon, President Gray and directors and staff. It's good to see everybody back healthy and well. My name is Debbie Black. My property in Cambria runs between Bradford and Burton, and I'm one of those pesky lot owners that just keep coming back and being a pain in the neck to you guys. I think my vision for 2024, which I hope will be incorporated into your strategic plan, is that this board, the five of you, heal the 23-year-old water rift in your community, that you will unify the two Cambrias that are coexisting. There's a certain amount of trust that people should have in their elected officials. First is to represent the people of their community, all the people of their community. And here it's the renters and the landlords and the business owners and the homeowners and the land, not only the landlords, but the landowners. And that's the category that I fall into. For over 25 years, I've owned property here and not been able to do anything with that. I could not build and live here and be a part of your community physically. I can't count how many board meetings I've attended over those years, and those boards rarely seem to care about securing water for the 700 of us Cambrians whose properties all lie within the boundaries of Cambria. These are all infill lots. We are part of Cambria. We have consistently paid our property taxes. You've heard this list, this litany. You know, we've maintained our properties, we've paved the roads, we've done everything that we've been asked to do. We've contributed financially to the schools and the library and the fire department, the ambulance, whatever. We've been there. And I hate to sound like a broken record. I've brought this up before, but I have to say it again because it really sticks in my craw. We've paid CCSD $88 per year per lot for 23 years just to maintain the water wait list, which frankly, for all intents and purposes, hasn't budged in 23 years. That amounts to over $1.4 million that we have given the CCSD. We think we've been shouldering our responsibilities and then some. I think we've proven our commitment to Cambria. We represent 12% of the Cambria community. I don't think that you can deny that we are stakeholders, just as much as my neighbors who have been enjoying my property for decades, building structures and using it as their own backyard. This is the year to build into your strategic plan the goal of uniting your constituents and uniting your community and working together with your amazing staff to endorse and champion the final solution that works for all of your people.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I think Dennis Ducic is also speaking on this topic. Ducic.
Well done. Thank you, Mr. President, board, staff. I'm just going to jump to the chase here. The district has sufficient reliable supply now without the WRF to serve at least 184, by some estimates, 200 plus residential connections without adversely impacting existing customers or the environment. The strategic plan is deficient. It does not address this issue. California is in the midst of a severe housing crisis. The state of California now requires local municipalities to immediately address impediments to infill development at all income levels. The water wait list lots meet the exact government code criteria definition for infill development, and the legislature has stated that building on them represents the most environmentally responsible way to increase the housing supply in California. The strategic plan is deficient in that it does not address this issue. The district needs the significant funds that will be generated by infill development connection fees. The strategic plan is deficient in that it does not address this issue. The district has legal obligation to make real progress toward removing the emergency declaration, and the strategic plan ought to include an integrated plan and timeline to reach that goal, while providing improved reliability for the district's water supply systems. The strategic plan is deficient in that it does not address this issue. California Coastal Commission's coastal development permit presently stands in the way of the district's operation of the WRF. If the WRF is all or part of the district's plan to serve the water waitlist customers, then the strategic plan needs to clearly say so, and a real plan to get there must be included. The strategic plan is deficient in that it does not address this issue. My wife Pamela and I, who live in Cambria now, want future generations to inherit a welcoming community as it was until the CCSD tore down the welcome sign to infill property owners 23 years ago. We want a Cambria where the community lives in peace of knowing that the next rainstorm or flood will not flood our homes or shut down our businesses or wreak havoc on our community. We want a Cambria Community Services District that provides all of these services in a safe, cost-effective, and environmentally sensitive manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Rice.
Could I make a comment quickly in response to Mr. Duchek? Since you had a number of items there where the strategic plan was deficient, if you could just provide your presentation, maybe written to our to Ms. Dodson, so we could have a copy of that.
I have done so.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
It'll be posted online tonight once I've compiled all the written comments into one document.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Farmer.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Ms. Rice.
President Gray, board, staff. I submit this community needs to be defining what they mean by enough, what they mean by reliable, what they mean by sufficient. When Los Osos got their permit to build their wastewater treatment plant, the Coastal Commission required that every connection use less than 50 gallons per person per day indoors. That was a condition of that wastewater treatment plant in Los Osos. Calculating out how many acre feet is required for the small number of new homes or current homes should not be that hard. It's part of your water shortage contingency planning and your urban water management plan. I would like to see reviewing those documents be part of the strategic planning, because it's where you get a lot of the information about planning that's best practices, because the template comes from the state. And theoretically, they do have experts putting those things together. This is a small district with a mighty staff, but still small. Let's lean on things that we can use to help us out. What is enough? Different people have different answers to that. It'd be good to put, is it enough to be able to have 50 gallons a day? Do you have to have 100 gallons a day? Do you have to have 25 gallons a day? Please have that discussion.
Thank you. I think that's all the people who put in speaker slips. I'll turn this over to Ms. Dodson to see who wants to speak remotely.
Yes, Daryl Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, please
Hi.
proceed.
Again, I apologize. I may have gotten the the items confused, which one I was supposed to speak.
This is 5A.
Okay. I'll just repeat my earlier comment much more briefly, and what others have already said. You are operating under a 23-year-old emergency, and addressing that emergency really deserves to be high on the list of your strategic plan. So I urge you to do that in the next update. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Any more?
There's no one else via Zoom, but I do
So we'll
have written comments to
Please,
read.
please proceed with the written comments. Thanks.
Okay, the first comment is from Ron Keck. Dear CCSD, securing a CDP for the WRF must finally be accomplished for 2024. Cambria needs this for so many reasons. The strategic plan and CDP must include the ability to lift the moratorium, which the CCSD is legally and morally obligated to do. We lived part-time in Cambria for 17 years and watched nothing get accomplished. We listened to neighbors and locals protest any method to provide additional water, which would allow the moratorium to be lifted, but continued to add bathrooms and even build separate structures with bathrooms and kitchens on adjoining lots they would pick up on the cheap. Not fair by any standard. Interestingly, any rate increase would be met with petitions and protests, yet the same people would complain that CCSD is not maintaining the water and sewage infrastructure. CCSD revenue is hurt severely by the double whammy of selling less water due to conservation and not receiving new hookup fees for over 20 years. Something has to give. Someone has to pay to maintain the system. This is Cambria's best chance to secure a CDP to guarantee the water supply, and it must include the ability to lift the moratorium and issue intent to serve letters and collect hookup fees to pay for the WRF and maintain the community infrastructure. The strategic plan must include these features. It is best for both current and future residents of Cambria. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Ron and Donna Keck. The second written comment is from Joan Linton. To the CCSD Board of Directors, Cambria has been frozen in time since 2001. While the rest of California confronts its issues regarding air quality, water insecurity, food production, wildfire suppression, and a housing shortage, Cambria has been stagnant, seemingly unable to move forward with regard to its inverse condemnation of 665 lot owners. We property owners pay annual property taxes, annual water list fees, maintain our weeds, and have been undeniably patient for 23 years since the emergency water moratorium was put in place. We have been unable to utilize our properties in any way. We deserve much better. While there may have been a water emergency in 2001, in 2024 there is none. As of October 31st, 2023, the state has declared drought-free. The recently renamed water reclamation facility was built to accommodate the emergencies that Cambria might encounter during drought years, yet no growth proponents have successfully managed to stop all new building in town for more than 2 decades, and are apparently very uncomfortable mothballing this $12.7 million project without regard for state and federal taxpayer monies invested to build it. While the entire community would likely benefit from new growth with hookup fees and increased revenue from property tax revenue, not to mention increased sales tax and merchant revenue from new homeowners, Cambria remains frozen in fear that the community cannot accommodate its own water master plan with regard to development build-out. The reports have seemed to indicate otherwise. There has always been endless obstruction and refusal to move forward. It is safe to say that the entire state of California has been and will be confronted with water insecurity in the years to come. Cambria is no exception, and it is not only the community within the 57 counties and 482 municipalities in the state that share this problem. Most communities like Dana Point, with its plan for the Doheny Ocean Desalination Project, are facing their water insecurity issue head-on, not Cambria. We already have a desal plant that was completed in 2015. It's most likely can be fine-tuned to serve the needs of all the residents in town, including the construction of 665 new homes. There is a housing shortage in the state, particularly near urban and suburban hubs like Paso Robles and SLO. Cambria is among those communities in which the fear of growth has simply become toxic. It is time for Cambria to engage in the solution. There is no legitimate cause to deny the lot owners of Cambria their property rights. Currently, there is no drought in California. The WRF should be a functional component of the water insecurity solution moving forward.
3 minutes.
Thanks. The next written comment is from David Balleron, to whom it may concern. We purchased our property on Jean Street in March 1989 with water wait list number 446. For almost 35 years, we've been waiting for the moratorium to end so we could build our retirement home. While waiting for the moratorium to be lifted, we have built 2 homes in Wrightwood, California and Fallbrook, California. It is our understanding that there is no need for this moratorium as the original premise of the water emergency no longer exists. Upon receiving permission to build, we plan to develop our property and build the home. The economic impact for the area will be positive, as the building of a new single-family homes will not only generate more property tax revenue, it will create local jobs in the construction, supply chain, logistics, and hospitality sectors. In addition, it will help alleviate the critical housing shortage in the state of California. Please come up with a plan to lift this moratorium and allow us to build our new home before we pass away. This situation has been going on way too long. Thank you, David Balleron. The next written comment is from Bill Curran. Thanks to the CCSD Board of Directors, General Manager Matthew McElhaney, and staff for soliciting input from stakeholders regarding a strategic plan workshop on February 8th. My wife and I have owned several lots for 20 years with the water waitlist position in the upper third of the 656 position residential waitlist. Our original plan was to build our full-time residence there. The passage of time may no longer make that our reality, but it is still our dream. Ensuring the WRF can operate during non-declared water emergencies seems to benefit all stakeholders, those with and without a voice, including the following. Holders of water waitlist positions. A waitlist implies service-only water becomes available. Existing customers. benefit by spreading WRF costs, debt service, maintenance costs, and operating costs to a larger ratepayer group. Connection fees and base rate water and sewer charges also spread the existing infrastructure expenses to a bigger group. Flora and fauna, habitat will be improved by operating the WRF during critical periods to maintain stream inflow and stream levels, as well as adding water directly to the San Simeon Creek Lagoon. So doing so will improve habitat for steelhead and other species. This seems to be a case where the use of the WRF can alleviate with our current impacts to the San Simeon Creek habitat. Conditionally, we endorse the CCSD proposal to submit the preliminary WRF CDP application to the SLO County for their consideration. However, the preliminary plan reasonably and ambiguously needs to accommodate new water connections. Sincerely, Bill Curran. And that is all that I have.
Yeah, thank you very much. Turn this back to the board just for any questions and clarifications of staff. And also, I wanted to maybe ask the ad hoc committee members, Director Dean and Director Thomas, what comes next, because this is the first round of public input in the process, and the plan that was developed by the ad hoc committee has another phase of comment before the actual strategic planning meeting that we will be conducting in early March. So either of you want to just explain a little bit, because I want to make sure the public is aware of how this process works and how this fits into that process. Dr. Dean?
Okay, so I believe a lot of written comments regarding this questionnaire has been submitted to staff prior to this meeting, and Ms. Dodson will forward these public comments as well as all the other input that has been received on the website to Director Thomas and myself, and we will consolidate all of those comments down into categories, and staff will send that out to all of the directors so they have a chance to see the results of all the public comment regarding our strategic plan prior to doing their own input on the SWOT analysis and the vision. Once the board and the other participants of the strategic plan submit their own input, staff will consolidate that input. It is not appropriate for the ad hoc committee to do that since it involves input from a majority of the board. So that is what will happen next. The staff will consolidate all of that and provide that to us for the strategic plan workshop.
Thank you, Director Dean. And Director Thomas?
Yeah, precisely. And then following from that, the strategic planning workshop of March 4th will be preceded the prior Monday on February 26th by another strategic, one last chance to give input. And then on the 4th, the folks that are, will gather up here to review that. And if you look at the big picture in strategic planning processes, this first step is the assessment of the current state. Where are we now? The strengths, weaknesses, and getting a grip on that, taking a look at everything we have and have done. Then that next step is, where do we want to be? What next? And as most of you know, if you look at the strategic plans of the past, you say, well, where is the vision statement? And so we're going to establish a vision for Cambria. The mission has already been established. This is, as has been pointed out, this is not the major update, but we'll focus on the mission, which is the delivery of the services, and then primarily looking at we have objectives defined. We have goals defined, but within the context of those established goals, what are the objectives? What are we going to be accomplishing, whether it's within the next year or goals that may take multiple years to develop, initiating those objectives to drive progress towards the future. So that's the context, and very clear on the mechanics.
Thank you.
So
yeah,
entertain questions, I guess. But.
Yeah. ask the committee members for their a little more explanation, because I want to make sure people understand what you say here today and what you've submitted in writing doesn't fall on deaf ears. It doesn't get forgotten, because it goes into a process of analysis of what the community sees as its needs. And so, this is the process of listening today, but we definitely are taking it down and recording it, and we're going to be making it part of the essentially part of the agenda for our strategic plan update. So thank you everybody who contributed to this comment period, because we're happy to see this many people interested in what we're doing in terms of the strategic planning, and I think that's a good thing. I will move on now, I guess, unless there's any further questions or anything. We don't have any action to take here on 5A to 5C, which is definitely another discussion item, but this is something that we've been working on for ever since last fall. General Manager McElhaney can introduce this, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 5C, discussion regarding the 2024 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program process and deadlines. Right now, there are no costs associated with this item because the Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program contractor costs are billed directly to the property owners by the district. And if not paid directly, costs are recovered via the San Luis Obispo property tax rolls as necessary. So as we know, we had an interesting year last year with the weed abatement process. So we, the fire chief, myself, Mrs. Dodson, looked at our processes and started to think about how could we better clean up our weed abatement program. Some historical background, under previous leadership, there was some processes that were occurring that allowed for those lot owners that did not weed abate in time to contract with someone to weed abate their lots. And if they were under contract, then the fire department was not placing them on the public nuisance list. And so they were escaping the kind of the legal process that we established as a district to weed abate those lots. And last year was a perfect storm, no pun intended, that those lots that were given the extensions were added to the incredible amount of lots that didn't pass inspection. So we went from an average of 50 lots to 150 lots. 50 lots to 150 lots in recent years, and we were up in the 700 range. We were, some of the numbers in here refer to 556 parcels. Well, that was in addition to the 300 that escaped our list. So we were in the range of anywhere 700-800 lots. So long story short, we're revamping that entire program. There is no longer going to be any processes or any authority at the fire department level to subvert the system that we have in place to put lots that are not weed abated in time on the public nuisance list. Once they're there, we will have the control and the ability to weed abate those lots in a timely manner. As such, on the next page after the staff report, we're talking about some of our updated dates. You'll see various dates there in which we've moved them up in comparison to previous years. Our belief is with the process change and the policy change that we're going to be implementing at the fire department level and admin level is that we will be able to weed abate more efficiently. We will have started the RFP process earlier. We will have a better defined RFP that's very specific about dates and when we want it done, how there will be no more extensions, and how if those lots are not handled in an appropriate time, the district will take that responsibility. We will do it, and we will bill the lot owners. There will be a change in the administrative fines that come with not weed abating your lot in time. And there's another agenda item on the back end of this that will tie into what we're talking about today. And I'm open for any questions.
Questions from the board? Director Thomas?
Just compliments on being very open and forthright about what happened and what we're going to do.
And with no further questions, I'll turn this over to public comment if there is any. I don't have any slips for this item, but Ms. Dodson, do you have any people who want to speak remotely?
Yes, Daryl Robinson, followed by a written comment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson?
Thanks again for recognizing me. I just can't help but point out the outrage that we've just had a long conversation about how the district is in a moratorium for 23 years, even though you've got all these property owners that are, you have an obligation to provide water, and we're paying property taxes and a fee to be on the list. And now you're talking about declaring us nuisances if we don't spend more money to clear out the weeds to protect your homes that you already live in, when you won't let us have a home that we can live in. It's just outrageous, mind-boggling, actually. Anybody who looks at this from the outside just says, well, that can't be legal, is it? Sure doesn't seem like it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And the written comment?
Yes, I have a written comment from Donald Archer. President Gray, Vice President Scott, and members of the board. Last year, as we were approaching our peak fire season, Cambria had all the elements set to make for a perfect storm. Ironically, heavy rains had created dense, high growth, generating more fuel to burn in the dry fire season, and late rains pushed the date for weed abatement back a couple of weeks, lessening the time for implementation. There was an ineffective fire chief who was not on top of his responsibility of identifying uncleared parcels and informing the CCSD of the magnitude of the problem. A new general manager who was unfamiliar with the challenges and was not informed or kept informed. A plethora of well over 500 uncleared undeveloped parcels as compared with the more typical 50 to 150 undeveloped parcels beyond the clearing deadline. A diminishing number of weed abatement contractors and personnel qualified and available to do the work. Increasingly devastating wildfires, of which the disastrous Maui fire was a reminder of how deadly a mixture of heat, winds, uncut grasses, and down power lines can be. A trend of increasing absentee property owners who have little knowledge of the area and very little, if any, stake in the community. There's very little incentive and no fines imposed to encourage uncleared parcel owners to get their parcels cleared promptly, leaving absentee property owners free of the bother of personally engaging a contractor and therefore having their property cleared simply by being billed for the contractor's fees and a nominal administrative fee. No wonder they've left it to the CCSD to do the work. It's been a hassle-free bargain. I am glad to see that the serious discussion has begun this year, as well as new procedures and ordinances being considered regarding the 2024 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program to address these issues. This is an extremely urgent and important issue for the board to consider. I wrote letters to board members and the general manager accompanied by photos I had taken of many uncleared lots near my home. Additionally, I spoke before the board last year on these very issues and expressed my deep concern for the safety and well-being of this wonderful community. After presenting my concerns, immediate action was taken by the general manager to clear the delinquent lots. The points to be discussed in today's agenda are great steps forward in addressing my and many other community members' concerns. I hope that the result of this discussion will ensure that there will not be a repeat of last year's chaos and scramble again this year or in the future. In addition to what has been proposed in the agenda, I think that the district should have more than one weed abatement contractor on call to avoid the situation we had last year where we had an emergency all district hands on board called by the general manager to get the work done as fast as possible due to the overwhelming load of uncleared lots. In this regard, more contractors should be trained and informed of the clearing procedure and what it entails. In the past, there were informative events available both to property owners and contractors to learn proper weed abatement procedures. Such events should be available in the future. While I see there is a discussion of fines imposed for violations and weed abatement negligence, I would like to see the amount of fines and penalties spelled out, keeping in mind that the stick should be significant enough to initiate timely action by property owners. These fines should be viewed positively as incentives to action to prevent future disasters and not merely as punishment for being an irresponsible, non-compliant parcel owner. Thank you, Donald Archer.
Thank you. Any more comment?
No.
That's it. Thank you. I was noted, and we might have to ask our council, we do, because I think and the staff report says we consider approving the annual fire hazard reduction program process, and yet in the agenda subject line is simply discussion. Our counselor, we haven't been bothering you today. Are you there?
David, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, David?
I click it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Are we authorized to act on it, basically, to consider it?
I believe that the board is authorized to act on it. I might add something, by the way, to the discussion, and that is there's been references to fines. And the way the current system is structured, there is no real fine. There's the ability to charge the costs associated with the work and eventually collect it on the tax rolls. There's also an administrative charge, which is established in the district's fee schedule based upon the costs that the district incurs in administering the program. But really, it's the next item that would create a mechanism to impose fines if the board chooses to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So I turn this over to board discussion, and if there's a motion, I invite one. Director Thomas.
I compared these dates side by side, and well, they're a bit more aggressive, not by much, but what really stands out is the July 15th deadline, which compares to the weed abatement deadline, which is within a day of the last year, but the fire department within the next day and within several days to compile that list. I asked, incredulous, are you really going to be able to do that? And what I heard was a clear, actionable plan to get it done. So I'm impressed, and so I think as Mr. Archer expressed the hope, I believe, I'm very confident that this year will not be a repeat of what we saw last year in any way. So with that, would you like a motion?
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes, I have a question from Vice President Scott.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. And I don't know that you have this information off the top of your head, but in let's say the last 5 years, when have we had fires before July 15th?
That's a good question in terms of, are you talking about wildland fires?
Yeah.
Vegetation fires? I can have the chief pull that data. Typically, we're the last in the county to really start to see ourselves dry out, where we really have this late moisture in our microclimate here that that's why we didn't budge much on the dates, because our fear is, we do it too early, there's more regrowth, and it complicates the problem when it dries out later. But I can pull that data. But what we're going to do efficiency-wise is that's how we're going to get this done sooner with a better contract and more clear dates, a little clearer guidance to our staff. But I can find that data out for you.
I'm just curious, mostly.
I mean, I do have the fire chief on Zoom. He might have a little better historical data about, vegetation fires pre-7/15. Chief?
If you could put them on, actually, because I was going to ask about, I think questions have been raised about that date, like when is it the time to really get going on this, and how long we should wait,
right.
Whether we should do it sooner. So maybe you can address that.
Sure.
Absolutely. So I missed the first part of that question. So if you could, yeah.
It regards the July 15th date, I guess, is the key date for the deadline to abate and remove the fuels. What is the argument for that? It's certainly an improvement over what we have now, but what is the argument for not making that even earlier, like July 1st?
Typically, it's usually due to the weather that we have on the coast. So we're being a coastal climate. We have a lot of just coastal influences as far as moisture. And so if we cut it too early or put it too early, that the weeds are just going to grow back by fire season. So we've tried to extend it as much as we can to try and mitigate that a little bit throughout the year. And, to reiterate, it's an ongoing problem throughout the entire year. We're expecting the lot owners to maintain their lots year round, but we're trying to do our due diligence and really, I don't want to say to do them a favor, but versus, inspecting it more than once per year. I think that's the date that we came up with as far as that reflects the environmental kind of challenge that we have in the community.
And then Chief, Vice President Scott had asked a question about, to your recollection, how many vegetation fires have we experienced in Cambria in your tenure pre-July 15th?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I don't have that that data on me at the moment. I could definitely get that for you and look that up. I don't believe it's very high. But once again, I can get that information for you. I just don't have the data at the moment.
Thanks, Chief. And then I wanted to circle back to one of the comments.
Please go ahead.
For me as a general manager for the fire chief, these processes and the next agenda item, I don't want to conflate policy with life safety. And so this is, I don't know how to put this, all politics aside, for me, this is a life safety issue. And while I understand the frustrations of some of the public, I wouldn't let that as a general manager, or if I was the fire chief, to stand in the way of the life safety of those folks that are here, those folks that are living here, those folks that have children here. So the weed abatement is an important issue for our community. It's an important life safety issue. And I don't want to conflate that with other policy decisions. Just my opinion, but I wanted to put that out there.
And I absolutely agree with General Manager McElhinney as well. So I really think, and that's well stated. So
yeah, I think I had one more. Actually, it's more of a comment. I think again, one of the public commenters, I think Mr. Archer, talked about the need to have multiple contractors. I think we are in good shape with our current contractor, Paradise Tree. You might want to talk about that a little bit, because we did have a problem with a contractor who didn't have the capacity last year.
Yeah, thank you, President.
Getting past that. Yeah.
We've had one of our contractors that's worked with us for years, who typically has done a very good job, was just overwhelmed with the amount of lots that were unabated. And we just didn't have, there was not enough communication from our contractor, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. It was some of that communication that was with our contractor, to our fire department staff, to our former fire department leadership, to then the GM, to really grasp what had happened to us. And so by the time it came up to my level, we were just in a hot mess, to be frank. So I think now we'll look at the contractors. We did hire an emergency contractor, Paradise Tree Service, who is a larger company, much more staff and very specialized equipment that was able to make short work of those lots in a shorter period of time. So they will definitely be one of our contractors that we'll be looking at through the RFP process. We're not saying that we're excluding anybody, but the scope of work that will be in that RFP will have some very tight and rigid deadlines for that, which potentially could exclude other contractors. So
if there's no further comments or questions, I will entertain a motion on this. Everyone wants to make it up. Director Thomas.
I move that we approve the 2024 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program process and deadlines.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2024 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program process and deadlines. Can I have Mr. McElhinney? Oh, could I have a?
I didn't hear which one of you seconded.
You beat me to it.
Okay. Sorry, I was looking down.
Yeah. It's moved by Director Thomas, and seconded by Director Dean.
No, Director Scott beat me, I mean, Vice President Scott beat me to it, yeah.
It's a lot of enthusiasm up here.
It's two of the female voices.
Anyway,
both sounded the same.
Fire hazard fuel reduction program 2024 process and deadlines be approved. So can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Director Thomas.
Aye.
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
You bet.
President Gray.
Aye. Moving on to 5D, I would ask, we'll probably go on a little time on this one, that we extend to 4:30, which I think gives us plenty of time to deal with this and any other items that come up. Do you have unanimous consent for that? Anybody object? Good. So our meeting is hereby extended to 4:30. Unless we need Mr. Hirsch, do we need a roll call?
I think the action that's been taken is sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
The minutes will reflect that the board was unanimous.
Yes. Thank you very much. Please, Mr. McElhenney again, and Mr. Hirsch is here too. He can help with the details of this. Please introduce the item.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda 5D, discussion and consideration of providing direction to prepare a civil administrative citation ordinance for violation of CCSD ordinances and regulations. There's no fiscal impact associated with this discussion at the moment. However, if the board decides to move forward with the directing staff to prepare a civil administrative citation ordinance, there will be legal expenses and staff time required, the cost of which is unknown at this time. This item here, and I'm just going to summarize it, and then Mr. Hirsch is on the line. He's really, really skilled and experienced in this area of municipal code and law. Essentially, what we're trying to do as the district is bring forward a civil administrative citation ordinance that will give the district more ability to motivate. It's a tool to enforce civil codes. It's a hope that it is a deterrent, a way to have voluntary enforcement of some of our municipal codes. One of those being weed abatement. And so, as Mr. Hirsch implied before, the public nuisance list is not a system in which we fine. There are administrative fees for us dealing with that list and things of those nature. The cost of weed abatement is placed back on the owner of the lot that wasn't weed abated. But for us to have more ability to deal with these things and provide a greater deterrent, there is this civil administration citation ordinance that, if we established it, would have different fees to be established by the board at a later date through resolution, that we could start advising our lot owners through notices and citations, and eventually escalating fines for every day that it's not handled for things like weed abatement. It also would allow us to do this if we established it, if we'd established a municipal ordinance with 100-foot defensible space around developed parcels. Right now, we have no ability to regulate that. But with this program, we could start looking at developed parcels. And when we have those developed parcels that are not complying with that 100-foot defensible space, we as a district can now enforce that and start working towards that. So typically CAL FIRE manages all of our developed parcels. This would give us a little more motivation, the ability to motivate those that haven't been able to get to things like that. And Mr. Hirsch is going to expand on it, but that's for all of our municipal code. So, anything that's in our municipal code, we technically could issue citations. And then I'll turn over to Mr. Hirsch that can frame it better than I did.
Yeah, Mr. Hirsch.
Just to expand on that, the type of codes include the California Fire Code, which the district adopts. And there are provisions in the California Fire Code relating to nuisances that are fire hazards. So those are things that also could be enforced using the Civil Administrative Citation Program. I'd like to emphasize, though, that code enforcement the approaches to code enforcement that I've always been trained in and advocated for is that the goal is not to punish people. The goal is to get compliance and voluntary compliance. And a civil administrative citation program is simply another tool that can be used to achieve that. As discussed in the staff report, the remedies that are currently available, such as criminal prosecution of someone for a misdemeanor, are cumbersome and very rarely used by a community service district. And this is something that is authorized by state law, that districts such as Cambria are authorized to implement. In doing some research, I did find some other community service districts that have these type of ordinances. One is attached to the staff report. I know Los Osos, for example, has one as well. I haven't tried to look at every CSD in the county, but it is available as a tool. Every city in the county does have a civil administrative citation program under this statute that's in the government code. So there are certain elements to an ordinance that are required as far as a process, and there are appeal provisions that would have to be included. The potential for someone to seek a hearing. Ordinances typically then take varying approaches to how they will have a hearing officer, whether it's a staff person from the agency who's not involved in issuing the citation, or whether it's an outside hearing officer. And folks who aren't happy with the outcome of a hearing can also appeal the matter to the Superior Court. Code violations tend to be very straightforward as far as proving the violations, and very rarely are there hearings. But those procedures have to be elements of an ordinance and would be included in it. The fines themselves are established by the board. The ordinance would provide that the board, by resolution, would establish those fines, and some alternatives will be brought to the board in that regard as part of that process of adopting an ordinance. So really, all we're looking at this point is for the board to discuss this as a concept and then provide some direction if they agree that it's something that we should put on the books, so that we can draft an ordinance and then come back with it. It is an ordinance that, it's a lengthy approval process. It's first reading, second reading, and then a 30-day effective date before an ordinance is actually in effect. And again, these are quite common. Just about every city in the state has them. Many special districts have them. And it's a useful tool in terms of seeking compliance with any number of different codes that the district has in place.
Thank you. Any questions from board members at this point? Oh, questions and comments at this point, because we're in discussion. Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And I had encouraged us to consider this a few months ago, as we're thinking about the thousands of water meters that district staff is going to have to open and put new tops on for the advanced metering infrastructure, and the hundreds that they can't get at, and just do the math on the hours that would add, and who pays for that? The community pays for that. It's just not right. So this is a great way to perhaps reduce that a little by creating the incentive. And what was brought up earlier, if I'm getting this right, this enables administrative fines for developed properties where those properties are fire hazards and don't make the code. And this is something that the community has been asking for years. Do I have that right?
I was going to ask about that too, and I want to ask if we, maybe as a general rule, do we have to pass an ordinance for that, or is state fire code and the existing state law on defensible space, is that adequate, sufficient for us to do this for enforcement? Maybe Mr. Hirsch?
I'm not sure what's in the California Fire Code as it relates to what you might call defensible space. I do know that the fire code has provisions in it relating to maintaining situations that create a fire hazard, which could be weed growth and things like that. And the California Fire Code is adopted by the board, and in part is incorporated a reference into the district code. So in effect, that is a district code and could be enforced.
Yeah, because the essence of my question is, I'm aware that there's been a this past year a tightening of the defensible space definition in the state fire code. You have this new area zero, zone zero, within 5 feet of a structure where you're supposed to have a basic cleared of flammable vegetation, and then 2 other zones out to 100 feet. I'm wondering because this would be a very good thing if we can enforce it without having to go through have our own ordinance passed. If that is in fact the law that we are in fact authorized to enforce, the state law itself.
We certainly adopt the California Fire Code. Perhaps Chief Berkey might have some comments in relation to what's contained in the fire code, which is a fairly hefty volume. Otherwise, to be honest, I would have to go back and research it. I've dealt with the adoption process here in Cambria and for other agencies, and I'm familiar with some of the provisions in it, but I certainly don't have the level of expertise that fire department personnel tend to have when it comes to the California Fire Code.
Mr. McElhenney, is Chief Berkey available, or is that something is a little beyond our scope here today?
He is available.
We ask him that maybe if the state fire code, does that cover the defensible space question basically?
Chief Berkey?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It does. I'd have to go back through and see exactly, what the exact terminology is. I don't have that with me as well, but yeah, it absolutely covers that 100%.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm going to turn this over to public comment if anybody wants to speak. Ms. Dodson was called out of the area. I think.
We're going to see
Ms. Fritz, you're on the one?
So it takes 2 of us to do what Haley does.
Yes.
So we're going to try and keep this on the rails.
Yeah,
but
first of all, call for public comment. I didn't get any slips on this issue. So does anybody here want to comment on this item in the hall? Okay. The next question is anyone online, Zoom, wanting to comment on it?
We do. We have one public comment from Laura and Crosby Schwartz.
Proceed, please.
Yes, good afternoon again. We're still listening. This is Laura Schwartz. And my concern, and I haven't heard too much about this, of all these different ordinances going to be able to be fined and reinforced and all that kind of thing. It's starting to sound just a little bit big government to me. That I guess my question, the fire one, maybe, but how many other ordinances are going to be possibly covered under this type of thing where now you have to go to court and appeal it and this and that? How many other ordinances? And does it cover homeless ordinances? Thank you.
Any other comment?
No other comments.
Okay, no other comment. I'll bring it back to the board. I guess the question I have is, do we want to, in terms of directing, providing direction to the staff, do we want to make any comments on the model ordinance or the example ordinance that we got from the Consumnes Community Services District? Want to comment on anything we would want to change in that, or anything that we see as not applying to us? Because there's a great deal of, I guess you'd call it boilerplate here, which is probably standard for all ordinances. And I looked it over, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as a problem. But I want to make sure if we want to go forward with this, that this would be for your model basically for going forward. And do we have any anybody have any comments or questions on that? If they're okay with this example, this model ordinance, as it were, going forward. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I think basically what the direction is that we want to provide, possibly want to provide direction for them to go ahead and write our own civil administrative citation ordinance. And the one that is the example here is, like you said, probably boilerplate, but it's going to go through a process by which we look at the wording in the future. So I think what we have is good.
Yeah, so we're safe. It's safe to say that this is a model of, this is obviously we're not going to imitate it directly, but this is what the kind of thing we want, essentially. I think that's a fair statement. So maybe I'll unless there's further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move that we direct staff to prepare a civil administrative citation ordinance for violation of CCSD ordinances and regulations.
And I second it.
It's been moved and seconded by Director Thomas and Director Dean that we basically direct staff to prepare a civil administrative citation ordinance for violation of CCSD ordinances and regulations. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
And President Gray?
Aye. Got the order just right. Good, thank you. That concludes our regular business for the day. We have some reports, which what I'll do with the reports is they're from the Finance Standing Committee and the Policy Committee and reports from the Friends of Fiscally Ranch Preserve Board and the Forest Committee. I will first ask if there's any public comment on these, and also the NCAC meeting liaison report. If there's any public comment on the items in that group, and then we'll have the board, any questions from the board too, but I'd go to the public comment first. Since people have been sitting here a long time, I'll let them speak if they wish. Does anyone want to comment on this here? Is there anything online? Any comment online that anyone wants?
No.
Submit, great, okay, and no written comment. Okay. I'll pass over to the board. If the board has any questions of any of the people making these reports. Director Thomas?
Thank you, President Gray. And I should comment, the absence of the PROS committee report. We had, our meeting was delayed to last Tuesday, so it's relatively recent, but it's worth commenting a few of the issues that you'll see in the next report, but a bit of the discussion. There was a little energy about the need for better clarity regarding the responsibilities of the CCSD vis-a-vis PROS committee vis-a-vis FFRP. Also has come up on the Finance Committee, so that's probably coming. The need for paving Rodeo Grounds Road. Anyone gone that way lately? That is, and by the way, new FFRP board members. I'm sure that's also in your report, right? So if it's not, we just noted that Kitty Connolly reported at PROS that FFRP has new board members, Marvin Josephson, Sherry Robichetti, and Kathleen Camp. So that's awesome. We discussed the linking boardwalk proposal. The PROS committee was quite supportive of that, and that will be coming to the board relatively soon. I'm sure we'll hear in the future agenda. And also the PROS committee discussed the goals that were established at the December meeting. And those will be coming to the board for review and concurrence. And that really will form the framework of what the PROS committee does in the coming year. In addition, of course, anything as directed from the board. Just wanted to share those things.
Director Dean.
You'll also notice that there wasn't an R&I report in there because we did not have a meeting in January. However, you will be getting a pretty extensive report next month because we have a very loaded agenda for Monday's meeting with a lot of really important discussions to go on.
Looking forward to it. Dr. Farmer.
I just want to ask Director Dean to remind us at what time that meeting is taking place this Monday.
That meeting is Monday at 2 o'clock in the dining room.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to do a public thank you to Ms. Dodson. I was not able to type. And so, I talked with her, and she went ahead and put my my oral report into written format, and I truly appreciate her doing that.
We all greatly appreciate what Ms. Dodson does for us in these, in all sorts of ways. So yeah, that was, I'm sure she'll be glad to hear that. So that's, we get a lot of support here from the staff in a lot of important ways, and then public should, hopefully the public can see that in action actually in these meetings. I didn't have any more questions for my report. I was wondering on the San Simeon, is anything new? I asked the liaison here, is anything new from San Simeon that you're?
No,
okay.
They didn't have a meeting in January, and they were supposed to have one first week of February, but even the December meeting wasn't posted on their website, so I don't have an update.
And I was going to ask the NCAC liaison if there's been any discussion of the Rodeo Grounds Road, which is a county road, and any sort of a little bit of energy coming from that source to, pressure the county to get something done.
Right. I think that is going to be the NCAC and the pros committee strategies of it is a county responsibility, and we've got to do whatever it takes to get these things done, and we will be working with the county proactively, and we've been discussing some strategies, but yeah, that's definitely in our radar.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all the reports. They're very informative. I'm going to move on now to future agenda items. Now, we generally have Ms. Dodson give us a list. Great. So we'll start with the list of items that are already on the docket, as it were, for the future.
So future agenda items, strategic plan workshop, discussion and consideration to adopt the district's strategic plan update, discussion and consideration of an annual review of the affordable housing unit allocation, consideration of approval of the management and confidential employees MCE group payment and compensation plan, consideration to postpone the general manager's performance evaluation to a date certain, discussion and consideration of adoption of a resolution to approve the records retention schedules, discussion and consideration of adoption of the fund balance cash reserve policy revisions recommended by the staff and finance committee, discussion regarding district vehicle use, discussion and consideration to approve the capital improvement project list format, discussion and consideration of adoption of policy 1045, legal counsel and auditor policy.
Thank you. It's a long list, but of course, this stuff is spread out over several agendas in the future, so it's more manageable than it sounds like. So we've been working. Some of these are from committees too. Policy working on some of them. Anyone have any other items they want to add to that list? Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. The East Ranch Community Park Ad Hoc Committee, we met with our landscape architect consultant out on the ranch, and as we have the initial plans and the location currently for the East Ranch restroom. You look at where that sits on the ground, and folks are sort of scratching their heads why. That'll be out sort of in the middle of, like, why will it be there? And so there was a bit of a conversation, and we'll bring, the ad hoc committee is going to bring to the pros committee a recommendation that would then come to the board. So I think that's probably the appropriate sequence.
Anything else? Okay. I invite public comment if anybody has anything they want to propose for the future, for future action out there. And I don't think there's anything online. I'd assume, maybe yes.
No.
No, okay, great. Well, with our business conducted for today, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, board members, staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David.